Namato Ratanatayasa. May I pay homage to Triple Zem, the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. My respect goes to my parents and my teachers. Hello, good evening, everyone. So today is Friday, the 2nd of October 2020. And this is Ajahn Sujan from Varapunya Meditation Center, Aberdeen, Scotland. And as usual, I'm here with you all on this Facebook Dhamma talk. And thank you everyone for listening this online Facebook Dhamma talks based on Buddha's principles, Buddha's teachings, and how we can use it in this uncertain time and dealing with difficult situations. Hi Pratibha, Margaret, Gautam, and everyone. This is an opportunity to spend some time and listening the talks on the Dhamma. Buddha said in the highest blessings, among the 38 highest blessings that one should cultivate, one of them is timely having discussion and listening the Dhamma talks. Listening the Dhamma helps us to clear some of the doubts that we may have on the teachings of the Buddha and the teachings that we can apply in our daily life. And it also helps oftentimes that we never heard about such a wonderful teachings. And further, it also helps us to how we can solve some of the problems that we are stuck. Whether it is from a family, whether it is personally, emotionally, or whether it is from the society. Most importantly, according to the principles, what we need to be mindful of is that first, listen. Whatever information that you can gather on any guidance, any instructions. And once you have listened or read, investigate that, analyzing it, whether the wordings are right or not, whether the information is correct or not. Once you have fully analyzed, then again, once you have fully understood that the path or the information or the guidance that is available is good for our life, it is helpful, then keep on practicing. And that practice is the matter here. The whole Buddha's teachings is not about the information that you get, whether you are getting it from listening or whether you are getting it from reading the books. And it is not even also analyzing that. Analytical understanding is not yet a Buddhist teachings. But the very moment when you have analyzed and put it into practice, and then that becomes the teachings of the true Buddha's teachings. And that's really applicable, that really makes sense, and that really helpful. There is nothing more than that. Now, over the couple of nights, I was talking on the principles on the basis of the right mindfulness. In the right mindfulness, which is the 7 factors of the Eightfold Noble Path, I was talking the 4th factors of a right mindfulness, the Dhammanupassana. In that Dhammanupassana, then I mentioned that I will not be talking on the hindrances, since I have extensively explained in a previous month, which is available in our YouTube channel. You can go and listen about it. And I was explaining about the 5 aggregates. And then the third spectrum, or the aspects or the principles in this Dhammanupassana, is the 6 senses. And it's been 3 days I've been working on that and teaching and informing you about the 6 senses. And today again, I go on that once more. And as we know that in the Dhammanupassana, there are hindrances comes first, second is the 5 aggregates, third is the 6 senses, and the fourth is the bojjhangas, the enlightenment factors, and then 4 noble truths. So these are the Dhammanupassana. And in the Dhammanupassana, I mentioned that it is not about analyzing, it is not about investigating, it is not about making sense by thinking or doubting. It is a result of having a truly understanding of what things they are. A physical body is combination of the 5 aggregates, or in a short form is a mind and a body, which doesn't, the 5 aggregates are simply a material things that is there, doesn't functions. But the very moment when we have the 6 senses, the 6 senses then again cognize the world and also build up the relationship with the world too. And now these 6 senses, the first translation we can say that this is a base, or this is a link that links to the world, the base to understand the whole world. And the 6 senses again, internal senses and then outer sense or external senses. And when this is link, when this is the base, that moment these 6 senses known as ayatanas. Ayatana. Yeah? Ayatana. And here ayatana is simply because it's a causal form or causal process. Eye comes to contact with the form. Whenever the eye comes to contact with the form, there is a contact. As soon as there is a contact, then that produces the feelings. Yeah? That produces the recognition first, not feeling. Recognition or cognition. And this cognition helps us to experience the world. And when we experience the world, and that's again comes from, that comes from Vedana. So first, ayatana or the 6th sense has got an object of awareness. Object of awareness, or the object, the base, the form, and then vijnana, the consciousness arises. The very moment when the consciousness arises, what happens is this consciousness is aroused because of the phassa, the contact, and it cognizes the things. And with the cognition of this, we experience the world. And when we experience the world, that becomes the Vedana. And on the basis of that Vedana, we react into Samvata or Vivatta. Samvata means going into the round of world system or the samsara. Vivatta, against the stream going into the samsara. And now, what normally happens is that the very moment when vijnana arises, vijnana itself is simply a spark. It hasn't got any identification. It hasn't got any formations or anything at all. But what happens is, as soon as the vijnana arises, and then with this vijnana, the vedana arises, the feeling arises, and the whole world begins to unfold. It's called papancha. Yeah? Papancha means the proliferation, exaggeration, formation, making a whole world. And this papancha, the creation or the proliferation, is again always driven by, is known, the craving, conceit, and the wrong understanding. The very moment the misunderstanding of the Vedana, we take that Vedana or the sensation or the feeling into the consideration that this is belongs to me, that is belongs to me, because of this I am, this is. It's called I making and my making. And because of this I making and my making, there's more craving. Tanha, ditthi, mana. Yeah? Tanha, ditthi, and mana. Now, among these three words, actually this defines, or actually this makes the whole world worse. It's like a bag of a tea bag. When you put in hot water, the longer you put this tea bag in the water, the darker the water becomes. Yeah? So the longer you put the tea bag in a water, the hot water becomes black, the more black. And that's same in our life too. The more we have this craving, and then this conceit views, and then wrong views, then we have got so much taints, asavas. There is greed. There are a lot of greed, a lot of hate. And if you want to know what is the greed, think about all the politicians, particularly in Asia, in India, in Nepal, in Thailand, or in Myanmar, or in Sri Lanka, underdeveloped country. All the politicians are so greedy that they always think of their own benefit. And they will do everything in order to get the power, in order to get the financial corruptions, so they become wealthy. So think of the wealthy. If you want to know how the greed works, think of all the politicians. But having said that, doesn't mean that there are no good politicians. There are some, but the majority are very greedy. And having said that, not just the greedy, the politicians are greedy. We are also greedy too, but our level of greediness is based on the capability of your own work and how much you can earn. Not about using the power, misuse the power, and then accumulating more wealth. That much greedy. And talk about the hate or the anger, again, politicians, the opposite party. Opposite party. Think of them. They're very angry at all the time. And always want to fix it. And that fixing mind is again because of his understanding. He thinks is the right, not the fact. And which is again similar here, compared to the West and the East. In the East, there were a king governing, and the kings were governing, and then perfectly republican and perfectly happy. And gradually the Western view of a democracy introduced, and suddenly everybody wants to have a democracy. And we want to have a democracy. And then we overthrow the kings, and we overthrow even the prime ministers or presidents. And when we overthrow, we do it with anger. And Western mind or education thinks that the politics, the democratic governance is better than the previously existence. And then with that, the older people, those who haven't got much understanding, they believe in thinking that yes, we can be the power, we can lead the country, I can do it too. With this, they go on. And what happened? The country goes down more and more. Think about this in Nepal. Think about in India, how corrupt. Think about in Thailand, how corrupt. Think about in other Southeast Asian countries, how much corrupt. And we talk about the corruption. But whereas in the West, they are governing by the democratic way, but they are also corrupt, but formal legal corruption. Yeah, legally corrupting. In the South, in the East, the corruption is not legalized, but here in the West, it's legalized. That's only the difference. But even if we look at the Plato, he even said, Aristotle, he said, Aristotle was the father of the democratic view. He even, at the end, his philosophy said, democracy doesn't work. Okay? But anyway, so if you want to know about the greed and about the how angry they become, look at the politicians. Okay, look at the politicians, and when they do, it's not because the country needs it. It's not because the good of the country, but they think about their own or their party, put at the front. Okay, so that is, and this again, based on the wrong view. And with that, we proliferate a lot, and the tea become a darker and darker, more darker. And sometimes we cannot drink because too dark. Too dark, and it's not tasty. You cannot drink like that. So our life become a toxic, simply because of proliferation on the things that we come across. Exaggeration on the things that we come across. And this, what we come across, is again based on the Vedanas. And the Vedanas arises simply again because the six senses comes to contact with it. So that is the causal process. Yeah? Causal process. And this is the six senses. But another form, it is also known as the Indriya. And Indra, and as you know, that Indra is the Lord of the heavens. Yeah, Lord of the heavens. Myo, I am giving a talk from Warapunya Meditation Center, Aberdeen, Scotland. Yeah, Aberdeen, Scotland. Okay. So, the Lord Indra is the king of the heavens. And again, he is what is called the principal God in the cosmology. And when we look at that, it appears in Hinduism, all other gods that we normally pay respect these days, or all the Hindus paying respect to the different gods. When we look at the Buddha's scripture, in the Tripitaka, these gods' names doesn't exist apart from the Indra and Brahma. Okay? Apart from the Brahma and Indra, there wasn't the records of Shiva, Vishnu. There is no record of the Ganesh, Lakshmi, Durga, and these are, and which suggests that in those days, during the time of the Buddha, these gods doesn't exist, but it suggests that these are later invention, development. But nevertheless, this is not our topic today. Our topic is the Indra, who is the principal god, or the lord of or the king of the heavens. And this has become the head, yeah, predominant. And this is the six senses are known as the Indriya, because the Indriyas dominate, or Indriyas are the principle in terms of the actively engagement with the world. So our engagement with the world is simply because of our six senses, not by anything else. That's why the six senses known as the Indriyas as well. But when we talk about the Indriyas, in here, I become the principal or the dominant to see something. Ear becomes the dominant to hear something. Nothing more than that, or all the senses become a dominant or a principle to engage with the world. And when we understand this engagement, the active engagement of this six senses as an Indriya to the world, the six sense basis, when we understand this relationship at that moment, then we will be able to understand how this is conditioned. And the very moment when we are looking from the perspective of the conditionality or the relationship between the six senses and the world, the six senses known as the ayatanas. Okay? Ayatanas. I had an opportunity to read and also edit one of the dissertation done by one of my close friend, and that is the ayatana in the Buddhist perspective and physiology. And she tried to present all the physiological concept of six senses along with the Buddhist view on it. And it appears that there are very, very similar understanding and similar explanation of how the six senses work according to the Buddhist perspective and the science perspective. So it was quite interesting. And later she completed that dissertation, and after her dissertation completed, she again enlarged in it. And I have got the copy of it, and I insist her to publish it, because it's quite an interesting book to read. Could be a very valuable asset for the Buddhist studies and the science. But she said that this book is incomplete. So hopefully one day this book comes and we can study more deeper into the science and Buddhist understanding about the six senses. But what we need to understand now is we observe or we connect with this world with our senses. When we connect, again, eye can do only one thing, that is to see. Ear can do only one thing, to hear. Nose can do only one thing, to smell. Tongue can do only one thing, to take a taste. And the body can do only one thing, is to come to the contact with the forms. That's why it is known as the Indriya. So predominant or the principle. And this is active engagement with the outside world. And any action that we do under the influence of these actions, the procedures, so the six senses, there is an object, and then when this object comes together, there is a six senses, it has got the vijnana, the consciousness, and then the object comes together, it's called the consciousness, vijnana. And with this vijnana that comes to contact with the forms, that creates the feelings. And with that feeling, we proliferate, which is known as the a papancha, which is a very beautiful one. That papancha is basically, we are in a hamster wheel, constantly running, constantly thinking non-stop, but we want to stop but can't stop. It's running and running and running, like hamster wheel. That is the papancha. And this papancha is driven by our craving, our conceit, and having wrong understanding. So that's why in the very moment a practitioner once understood the relationship of it and how the senses are dominant and a principle and a relationship with the world, that moment with the mindfulness we will be able to be aware of it and able to restrain and able to control. And when we able to control this, the very moment we get a peace. That's why there is a saying that wind blowing inside the windows and blowing off the candle again and again. I wonder how can I shut the doors so the light will be continue burning. Yeah? So in this case, the wind is all the kilesas, the defilements. The light is the inner light through the enlightenment, and the window is basically the six senses. All what we need is to close that window, and to close that window we have to have a mindfulness and wisdom. And once we got this mindfulness and the wisdom, then we will be able to close the window. Once to close the windows, then the light will be illuminates in our hearts and minds, and that is the path to the liberation. So I offer this for tonight's reflection, and thank you everyone for listening. And today again is the last day of the Vassa. We are going to have a small ceremony and followed by the chanting. After chanting we will have a short ceremony and possibly we'll have a guided meditation. Until then, thank you everyone for listening, and may you all be well and happy. May the Buddha Dhamma Sangha bless you. And hopefully we'll see you shortly for the chanting and guided meditation. If not, then see you tomorrow. Until then, good night and see you shortly. Thank you.